Well, Doug, maybe in the interest of time, we can get started, and other folks that we have a handful of people, including Amy, that will probably be joining us. But good evening, everybody. We're here for workshop number 4, the last of our 4 workshops. Thanks again for taking the time to do this. I'm going to share my screen right now and explain to you what the evening's events are. All right. Can everybody see that okay? All right. So yeah, so number 4. We are going to be putting a lot of stuff together tonight. We're going to start by reviewing our top 10 design patterns based on your small groups last time. We'll look at guiding principles 1.0 based on the work you did in your small groups last time. And then we're going to get into some just random triads, groupings, and talk about anything that we might want to add, delete, or modify. And we're going to just spend about 20 minutes doing that. We'll come back and we'll record that on using the Mentimeter. And then we're going to do a blue sky ideas activity where we're just going to talk about aspirational ideas and give you the opportunity to write about them or diagram them. And then we're going to take a break, and you're going to have the opportunity to work with your architects. And we have, we're going to ask you in just a moment to choose using the chat function, your top 3 choices in order of which group you would like to be in. We're going to try and give everybody their first or second choice, if at all possible. And then we're going to wrap up with an activity around community talking points that sort of sums up some of the things that we feel are important to communicate to the Wakefield community about the priorities that we've been establishing together. So that's the tonight's sort of agenda. But what I'd like to do is have you now, because it's going to take us a while to put people in their groups, is to take the time to, using the chat function, choose which of these small groups you would like to be in. So we're going to be in bubble diagramming groups for about 40 minutes. You're going to be working with an architect, and Matt Rice is going to explain to you a little bit more later what that's going to look like, but you're going to have access to an interactive platform. You're going to be able to diagram things, but you're also going to be able to work with your architect to just talk about ideas. And what we'll look at is diagramming whole school. What are the big main spaces and how do they relate to each other? We'll also have a group. We'll probably have 2 groups that focus on whole school because that tends to be a big draw, but we'll see what people are choosing. We'll also have a group number 3, that will focus on what a typical neighborhood cluster might look like. Or a small learning community. That was sort of right up there in terms of our priority design patterns. And then we'll have a group that will focus on the community access core. So what that community center looks like at the core of the building that's accessible to the community after hours and on weekends. We'll also have a group that will focus on the innovation core. That came up a number of times, and STEM STEAM was right up at the top of your list as your number 1 priority design pattern. So this would be an opportunity to talk about that and how that connects to other adjacencies of key spaces. And then we'll have a group that will focus on outdoor learning and play. So if you could, what I need you to do is not just choose one group, but I need you to, and just do it by numbers. So I want you to say, if your first choice is neighborhood cluster, your second choice is innovation core, and your last choice is whole school, then you would say 3, 5, 1. All right, so that's your first, second, third choice. So if everybody could just give us your first 3 choices, that would be great. And then we're going to, I'll leave this slide up here for just a moment so people have the opportunity to do that. Again, using the chat function.
Do you want us just to chat directly?
Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry, this is
Yeah.
Joanne. In the chat function, I only seem to have the option to chat to one person, not to the whole group. Is there one person that's organized?
Nolan. We're gonna if you go to the, is it in a blue Is that person's name highlighted in blue? If you click
Yeah,
on
we
that,
can change it, but we just want to pick, who do you want
yeah,
us
you
to
want
pick?
to do it to everyone. You want to chat to everyone
I don't see if that's a choice. Am I wrong?
at the very top. If
I also
not,
don't
then
have that choice.
if you don't have that choice, then chat to New Vista Design.
It only shows that it does to host and co-host. Those are the choices.
Okay,
do
do it to the host then, if you would. I see a lot of stuff coming up here, so I'm assuming that that's people. Those are people that are chatting to the host. And then just make sure, Joanne and Meg, that that you see that it showed up on the chat. Is that working now?
Yes, I was able to send it to New Vista.
Okay, great. Oh, I see. We got people sending it to me. Okay. All right.
David, Tom speaking. I have sent chat to, and it has all these co-host names. That's what I have. Am I supposed to pick?
Yeah, you want to just send it to the host, Tom.
Oh, the host.
Yeah.
New Vista Design.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Or you can send it to me, and we'll just match. We'll just make sure we have everybody. All right. Everybody good there? All right, so we're going to hopefully have everybody's. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue here. So what I wanted to do first was I wanted to just spend about 10 minutes reviewing our top design patterns, and then we'll get into the guiding principles and see where we landed. So I'm just going to go through these really quickly. Now, Shane Nolan had sent everybody in this group the notes from our last meeting, so you should have those. I'll also see if it's possible for me to send those out to everybody or just put them in the chat. But these are all there. So right up at the top of your list, and what I did is, from your small groups, you each identified your top design patterns. Every time one of these design patterns appeared in one of your small groups in some form or another, I gave it 5 votes because there were about 5 people in each group. So right up at the top is STEM STEAM adjacencies, specifically talking about tying together departmental areas, the idea of an engineering robotics lab with proximity to the outdoors, and also WCAT, that synergy between the TV curricula and the STEAM. So that's right up at the top. In second place, heart of school. And I combine this with learning commons because people were using the same language about heart of school and learning commons. And certainly the learning commons and the cafeteria might both be a heart of the school. You might have multiple hearts of the school. But the idea is that these spaces are collaborative, that they have open access, they're sort of at a hub, they're welcoming, they might incorporate storytelling and history within it, and they function as central gathering places. The idea that there might be multiple hearts so that different student groups can have their own welcoming space. The idea that there could be STEAM adjacencies here, particularly with the Library Media Center and Learning Commons. And there was some thought about, just that balance between the Media Center or Learning Commons as a quiet space or a more activated space. That's certainly something that Library Media Commons these days need to be both of those things. So we'll have different zones within them. So that was number 2. Number 3, community access. Looking at the ability for the community to access the building, but being able to lock off areas of the rest of the building. Universal design and accessibility came up next, connected to, of course, ADA accessibility, but also easy wayfinding, good signage and graphics, maybe the use of color and materials to help navigate between different areas of the building, having good acoustics, various heights for counters, just making the building be really easy to use by people of all different abilities. Next, Agile Classrooms that would support project-based learning and that would also support kind of small group activities, classroom neighborhoods connected to that. One of these neighborhoods might be a STEM or a humanities neighborhood, but the idea is that there's synergy between different kinds of spaces and the adjacencies between them, and that these spaces are flexible and varied. Dining as social commons, looking at the learning commons, cafe forum as one of those hubs, but maybe there would be smaller areas for small group dining. Also breakout and quiet spaces, the idea that learning can happen anywhere. These might be extended learning spaces or just breakout rooms. And that could be connected to things like a counseling suite or spaces for special education or sensory spaces. These spaces are flexible and should be dispersed throughout the building. Extended learning that supports project-based learning and that idea of anywhere, anytime learning. They should have flexible furniture. Going down the list, welcoming arrival with comfortable features and soft furniture and good lighting, and visible learning and transparency. These all were up there with 15 votes, or in three different groups identified them as their priorities. And so visible learning really connects to that idea of extended learning and connectivity, but it's really a conversation that you'll have with your architects about what that looks like, where transparency is best and most usefully located. And then design patterns that sort of fell towards the lower end of the list, but came up on at least two lists, were the professional work areas and enrichment spaces, the idea of security and welcome, which we're going to be looking at anyway. Indoor-outdoor connections, again, it's kind of unusual that your group didn't have this in the top 10, and I'm not saying it's not important, but it's come out a number of times that it hasn't been prioritized as high as some other things, where many communities are putting that way up at the top of their list. So certainly we'll be thinking about those indoor connections and outdoor connections anyway, and how to best maximize the use of your site, wayfinding and streetscapes, the idea of flexible science labs, which we're going to be doing anyway up to MSBA standards, and the idea of anywhere, anytime learning, which is kind of came up a lot in connection to the extended learning and breakout spaces. So those were your design patterns. You can look at them in more depth in the notes. What we're going to do now is take a little bit of time to talk about guiding principles. And so do people have the access to this from the notes that Shane sent earlier today? If you don't have those, then you might try taking a screenshot of this slide right now so you have access to it. What we're going to do is just put you in groups, in triads, just for about 8 or 10 minutes. And the question here is, is this a good representation of guiding principles, of what you think are important? And what might you add, delete, or modify in version 2.0? Now, you don't have to take notes, but you can take notes in your small groups. Again, it's just going to be 8 to 10 minutes for you to talk about this. And then when we come back, we're going to use Mentimeter to just talk about what those, how you might add, what you might add, delete, or modify within this 1.0 version. Okay, so any questions about that before we just jump into these groups? Did everybody get either a screenshot of this so you can refer to it, or have access to the notes that Shane sent earlier? Are we good with that? Do I see faces nodding yes? Okay, good. All right. So great. So we're going to put you in groups. We'll see you back here in about 10 minutes, and then we'll see what people are thinking. Okay. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Sorry if that was an abrupt end to your conversation. I know that that's how it can often feel when we've got this automatic kind of pulling back from breakout groups. So now that you've had a chance to talk about it a bit with your small groups, I'm going to open up, I'm assuming everybody can still see my screen here. And what we need to do is go to menti.com, and the number tonight is 39702546. And you should see this screen. And I'm going to leave up this image so you can have reference to the Guiding Principles 1.0. But as you think about version 2.0, just give us your suggestions that you discussed in your group in terms of what to add, delete, or modify. And we're just going to take about 5 minutes to let people input their stuff and see if there are some themes coming up.
David, can you explain menti.com? Some people joined late.
Sure. What you want to do is, so this is an interactive platform that will allow you to interact with the slide that is on your screen right now. So if you go to www.menti.com, it'll give you a place to type in a number code. And this is the number that you see at the top of your screen, 39702546. And you should come to this slide, and it should give you the opportunity to submit a number of comments in terms of this prompt about what you might add, delete, or modify based on the conversations of your group. And you can, I should have said to people, you can elect someone to input your ideas, but I'm imagining we're going to see similar themes come up if a number of people from each group are sending in their thoughts. So I see that 8 people have contributed so far. I'm going to leave this up for another minute or two before we look at what's on the screen. Now, this process is really a subjective one. Of what I tried to do is look at the things that came up repeatedly in your small groups and then group them together thematically. But what the particular headline is or the order is something that that we can play around with. I should have said before I sent you into your small groups, I didn't put them exactly in order of the number of votes, because what I tried to do is put all the left side column was things that had to do with academic programming and educational program, and the right side column had to do with that as well as the building. So I tried to keep the educational focused headlines on the left-hand side. All right, so let's go over and see what people are saying. Okay, so let's see. Well, this is a lot to unpack. A lot of crossover between the groups. Section 5 can be deleted. That comes up a couple of times. And that section 5 is the small learning communities, large school pride. So indoor-outdoor connection is important and should be emphasized in the planning. So that's something that we can add. Some people think this is great. Another note that it feels like it was the priorities were representative of what you discussed in the last section. And then there's some wordsmithing that we can look at, and we'll take all of these into account as we come up with version 2.0. And it's something that can continue to evolve. But I think the basic thing is we want to make sure that our design team has, in terms of the guideposts, is aware of what your large, your big picture priorities are. So school as resource, we've got creating highly attractive communal spaces, can be used as events. Under visible learning, adding a celebration of Wakefield's history and historic legacy. Learning neighborhoods and co-located disciplines as part of small learning communities. Yes, and what we'll do is we'll take out the votes in version 2.0. We won't have the votes next to them, so they won't be hierarchical in that way. All right. Yeah, anybody, so again, we'll take all this into account into account as we look at version 2.0. Anybody want to share anything of particular interest that came up in your small group conversations? It's always interesting to hear from people about what the highlights were.
David, Andy has his hand up.
Okay, Andy, yes, just go right ahead.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we talked about was, there's this, there seems to be, two things that we're trying to accomplish, it's the heart of the school and, large school pride, and yet, so much attention is given to the adjacencies and the, the integration and the clusters, and the struggle between how to achieve those two things in one building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're definitely achievable. And when we look at when we do our whole school diagramming today, that'll be a chance to sort of figure out what that might look like. But we can definitely think about the adjacencies between those core spaces and then those satellite neighborhoods, whether they're organized by discipline or have more of an interdisciplinary connectivity. Those are these smaller kind of orbits that students might find and teachers can find themselves in that will create their own identity. To the extent that we create extended learning spaces, then those become smaller hubs, but the core spaces could be the larger hubs. So it's definitely a conversation that our architects are very familiar with in terms of how to create both of those. All right. Well, thanks. So I'm going to move on in the interest of time because I definitely want to make sure we have plenty of time for our bubble diagramming tonight. But in order to prepare for that, I wanted to talk about and get some of your thoughts about blue sky ideas. So blue sky ideas are aspirational ideas. Now, of course, we know that we want a very practical building. And that's going to be really flexible and that it's going to meet your needs educationally now and into the future. This is our opportunity to think about either a space or qualities of the building that we would really love to see and be very kind of not pie in the sky, but aspirational about it. So one example might be a roof garden, a science garden or something, or maybe a sculpture park, or an indoor, an outdoor kind of central courtyard, or you could talk about the innovation core or something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 5 minutes to just collect people's ideas, and then we're going to give you each 15 minutes to individually kind of think about something in more depth and either do a diagram of it and you're going to take a picture of it and send it to me, or you can just write about it. Okay, but for now, we're just going to look on again through Mentimeter. You're going to have the opportunity to share a blue sky idea here, and you have up to 250 characters. So something that you would love to see that you think would support the culture of the school. It could be a particular space or a collection of spaces. It could be qualities of the building as well. So let's take about 5 minutes to just do that. And then we're going to take about 15 minutes after that to get a little bit more in depth individually in terms of a writing prompt or a diagramming activity. Okay. Anybody here want to talk about one of their ideas that you're particularly excited about? There's always got to be a pool in the list, and that is an aspiration. The MSBA will not fund a pool. They're pretty firm about that. But that's certainly something that would a lot of communities like to have. But they've got a pretty firm line in the sand around that. Art galleries, definitely we see that in a number of the high schools we've done. Roof gardens, connected to engineering spaces, a circular space that allows students to see everyone in the room as a discussion space and with good acoustics. Okay. A yoga room or fitness room. Permanent community art display. Yeah, we can definitely be thinking about, see, a lot of these things, although blue sky, are definitely doable. So we can definitely think about sort of public art display, outdoor secure learning spaces, outdoor passive spaces, a usable courtyard, meditation rooms, quiet spaces, greenhouse, a band, a place for the band to practice. You will definitely, that is definitely in the MSBA template. Large engineering rooms, also in the MSBA template. The shared woodworking area, we can talk about that hands-on component. So pool, again, not in the cards for the MSBA, but indoor track is definitely something that we have seen. And definitely spaces to showcase artwork and 3D display. Nooks, definitely going to be thinking about that. Building as teacher. A grand entrance that makes a statement about the school and the community. More green rooftop and greenhouses, monitors showcasing student work. Cool. And minimizing climate impacts of building materials. We're definitely going to be thinking about that. Transparency in operations and structure to learn about, so that idea of building as teacher, and recycling programs, small black box theater. Glass, but it needs to be tinted to control glare. All right. Showcase to feature the Indigenous history of Wakefield, sculpture park. All right, great. So what I want to do now is I want to take about 12 to 15 minutes to give you an opportunity to either write more about one of these ideas or think of another idea. So this is where individually you can either choose to, you're going to email me with this, either get a piece of white paper and diagram your ideas using a pen or a Sharpie marker if you have one. Pencil is okay, but the darker it is, the better in terms of translating into a picture. Or you can just write about something. But I would really encourage people to try and diagram. You don't have to be a great artist. It can be really diagrammatic, like something like this with just descriptions of what you're trying to communicate. So again, thinking about a space, maybe this is your classroom or a space that you would use, thinking about the features of that space, or you could think about a collection of spaces, as in this neighborhood diagram. This diagram here is a rooftop garden or a rooftop outdoor area and what that might look like. Here's a ESL suite. So what I'd like for people to do again is just get a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper. We're going to start the clock now at 7:15 and we'll take 15 minutes. You're going to have a chance to diagram with your architects, but this is a really helpful activity for them I think, to just get into your mind a little bit about the kinds of things that are important to you in terms of the features of particular space. And that after we do this, I'm going to give you my email and you can send it. I think you all have it, but I'm going to give it to you again. So here's some examples of some of the diagrams that we've gotten. But again, if you want to just do a bulleted list of elements of a space or a series of spaces, you can do that as well. All right, any questions about that? Okay, well. I'm also going to, while people are doing that, in the chat, there is a list of people that haven't chosen a group yet for, and I see that Lynn and Shane, you're both in there, so don't worry about that. But we have a few people that we don't have a choice for your group, and in terms of what small group you'd like to be in for diagramming. And you don't need to do it by number. You can just put the name of the thing that you're most interested in, your first, second, third choice. And that's, we got Bridget, Cara, Patty, and Tom. Okay, so if you could just share in the chat to New Vista Design, or there should now be an option, I think, for everyone in the meeting, and just share that. Okay, any questions as we're doing this activity? All right, so we'll see you in about 12 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Again, I know that people were in the midst of lots of interesting conversations and diagramming, but just in the interest of time, we've got to sort of keep moving on. But let's take about 2 minutes to hear from each group about what they've been talking about. I'm not sure what the easiest thing, Helen, your group number 1. Do you want to share your screen, or would you like me to share mine?
I can share.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll just take about 2 minutes with each group because we do have one more activity before we close off tonight at 9 o'clock. So I'm going to let you know when 2 minutes is up, just to keep us on track.
Okay, I'm happy to let others in my group interrupt here, but we worked from the heart, literally and figuratively, and started right there. We don't know exactly what's in the heart, but we knew that we wanted the main entry to be connected to it, and all of these other things that you see here ringing around it to be connected to it. We felt that it was important to have student supports be connected, but not directly connected to the heart. We did start to refer to some classroom clusters, though that didn't get fully there with those. We like the idea of having the auditorium, arts and music together with a community entrance that would be separate between the auditorium, arts and music, and the dining, field house relationship over here with all our services. And one thing that kind of came up that was interesting was there is a bank currently in the high school. And so kind of flipping that a little bit and talking about it in a different way as not as a bank, but maybe as a financial literacy lab. So that's as far as we got. Anything that I'm missing from my group?
Yeah, you've got 50 seconds, group number 1.
Oh.
Anything to add? So any questions that anybody has? All right. I guess I just have a quick question about the financial literacy lab. Is that still a bank, and would it maybe have an exterior entry, or it's a, how are we thinking of it?
Not as a bank, because the people in our group all looked at each other and said, when was the last time you actually went to the bank and saw a teller? Okay. So right. It's thinking about it in a different way.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. That is That was loud. Okay, next, group number 2. Whole school.
So I think it'd be better for one of the educators to talk about it rather than.
Can you share your screen, Phil, or do you...
Isabel and Amy or Leslie or Diana want to talk about this?
Sure. So and please, Kara or Diana, jump in. I think we, or Leslie, or I think that we started just talking about the community space. So we just started mapping backwards from there a little bit, because I think we all agreed that we wanted sort of the field house and music and theater and the auditorium to be accessible to the community, be separated if needed to be closed off from the rest of the school. And then we got into a really good conversation about dining commons and how we envision kids being able to access those spaces, or the library, and what that those spaces could provide. And I think similar to the first group that was looking at the heart of the school, we started talking a little bit about like, where are the places where kids congregate? Where are the places that they may congregate maybe after school? And then Phil talked a little bit about the mapping is thinking about like a star, which again, I think that's what the first group did, like building from the heart of the school in the middle. And so, yeah, I don't know, Diana, fill in, or Kara, what I missed. I think we were kind of talking around some of these areas.
I mean, even just talking from like a logistics standpoint, like what do you need to exist outside of school hours, and like how can it be closed off? Like we've unfortunately had situations where schools are insecure after school hours. We want to have teachers and students feel safe. I'm trying to think of what else we talked about. We wanted multiple. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no.
Go ahead.
Having the library upstairs, maybe, or visible but not in the busy area, a little bit quieter. And then the orange ovals, we started to think about the classrooms, but definitely having the different spaces that can be used during the day, but also by the community.
All right, great, thanks. All right, we're going to switch over to group number 3, neighborhood clusters.
Okay, let's see. Can you see that? So we had a pretty, sort of wide-ranging discussion that placed, this is probably a diagram that wants to be 2 diagrams, probably one for humanities and one for STEM, STEAM. And we talked about, well, what should be in the center of this universe. For STEAM, it would be a makerspace, and for humanities, it might be a large group instruction space, which would be very multi-purpose and could be used for large groups, for as an art gallery, and for many other different things. And that there are other kind of services in the middle. It was important that the teachers are visible and present there, that the push-in has presence not only in the core, but also among the other classrooms, that there's differentiated learning possibilities, that a staircase might animate the circulation area, and that there might be areas off of it where collaboration happens. There might be access to the outdoors. Our group kind of created a list of principles first, so I think it made the diagram go together pretty well. If anyone else in the group would like to jump in and talk about any other aspects here, that would be great.
Brian, what does bullseye mean?
The mural made that up. It's just an underlay for putting things on. I think the group wanted to have the idea of something that's radiating, And so there's a center of gravity, if you will, to the organization, rather than a simple linear corridor.
And you got a meta space in there too.
It's kind of the building in microcosm.
All right, great, thank you. Thanks, group number 3. Group number 4, community core.
David, this is Ben Williams. I had to leave for a second and come back so I could share my screen. I think I need to be made a presenter again to share mine, or if you could share for me, I could narrate.
Yeah, I think I can. Let me just hold on. I think for some reason I can't. I tried to open up the community core. I can't get it. I have a black screen in front of it. It's not allowing me into it. So I'm going to make you a presenter.
Sure.
Or all right. So.
David, I think you hit the mute button.
Yep. We're finding you, Brian. In the
Ben.
Yes.
He said Brian. It's Ben.
Oh, yeah. So it says that the host disabled participant screen sharing for me. So I need to still be made a presenter to share.
I'm sorry, you're not Brian. So you're
BMW is it's on the screen. Ben Williams.
Ben Williams, sorry.
Share if you need. I'm able to access
here it is,
his.
Ben Williams, right here.
Okay, never mind.
It's right in the center.
Isabel, I think if you have access to it, why don't you just go ahead and share it?
That would be good. Yeah.
I think we got you. We got you, Ben.
Perfect.
Okay, all set.
Thanks.
Let's try it out.
Sorry for the delay. Here it is.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So here we go. So this here is the diagram that we created for the heart of the school. We talked more about it as heart of the school than anything else. We talked about learning space, learning commons as well, but we first went around and talked about what does that mean to everybody. And we all kind of understood that it was a communal gathering space, that this was the place where the community was going to come together. But more than anything, the heart of the school should be considered as kind of a vibrant, dynamic place where people can intuitively take a pulse of the school and understand what it's about. And how does it interact with the main entrance, and what are the sort of activating qualities of sort of the center, the heart of the school. And so felt strongly that kind of the, in sequence, that the main entrance should be, as a starting point, should obviously create a security barrier, but and lead to what would be the heart of the school. Potentially, you could have, if you wanted to, kind of a way of letting, classrooms on one side sort of become a bit of a barrier, so that way there is a sense of intimacy towards what the heart is, while still having immediate adjacency to the main entrance. When you get to the heart of the school, there's several common factors that we discussed, but the most important, I think, of which is the ability to have multiple different functions in the space. And I think we've all sort of understood what those are through the understanding of design patterns, but especially the idea that you have a dining commons that can be converted into a large group instructional space, having learning stairs that at one point could be serving a lecture, but then could later on during a independent study period could become kind of individual working space, places where individuals could sit or groups could gather. Likewise, you want to have a combination of different types of small group space for people to sort of gather together in a cove and kind of break out and huddle together to discuss their issues, or potentially other spaces, open seating areas where you could have more open meetings with larger groups. One of the key pieces we thought in terms of circulation going through the heart of the school is that you do get sort of these abilities to flow through, not necessarily a linear way, but sometimes that are more that lend themselves towards spontaneity. We talked about some of the impromptu conversations that can come from that. We also talked about different entities, organizations that may benefit from one another, but also activate the heart of the school. Things like the TV studio and WCAT. Does the band want to have an adjacency to the commons? You know, if there's a band camp, do they want to have that sort of relationship? Are there ways to think of, you know, satellite hearts within the school and how those might kind of work off of what we call the main street, where, you know, from the entrance all the way through the school, you have sort of these main roads that kind of permeate and go through.
Okay, Ben, we're going to have to move on, Ben.
Fair enough, sir.
That's great. All right, very good. We got one more group. Matt, you want to share your screen? Ben, you're going to have to let go of yours. Yep.
Oh,
thanks. Great.
All right, I want to go the direction that Phil did and ask that sort of our team maybe explain this. There's a lot of great things about this, but it'd be great if some of our team members can, or group members can vocalize what's here. Nobody was shy in our group.
I can share. So we sort of went off this idea for the Innovation Hub of having, you know, a satellite heart of the school. So building off that, you know, creative heart, and just sort of made a little perimeter with the studio art, the visual, photography, and then down into the TV classroom and studio. And then up at the top, the engineering, computer science labs, and then some academic classrooms. We also wanted to make a connection to that Creative Common through a makerspace that would then be connected to the Learning Commons. So sort of a different avenue to access that. Another thing we talked about was using some sort of visual bookcase that you could see from either side as not only storage, but also showcase, because we have so many projects that are in progress for many weeks at a time, so that we could store them, but they would also be visible into the commons so that people could sort of see that work in progress. We had this connection to the outside, one for sort of sculpture yard, outdoor table, access for the art students and photography students, and then the engineering students for testing. And then maybe some sort of external entrance or exit into the theater auditorium. So that could be a community space. They could be separate, but still have some connection to that space. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything.
Well, that was a perfect 2 minutes, Catherine. So you were right on there. So excellent. Well, let's give everybody a hand for all this work. This stuff is incredibly useful for our design team to get a sense of how you're really thinking about all of the parts that we've been discussing fitting together in your ideal scenario. We have one more activity. I'm going to share my screen. It's just a 10-minute activity, and it's about talking points. And this is also really helpful as we think about just reflecting on the conversations that we've had over the last 4 workshops. What are the 3, 4, 5 kind of sound bites, if you will, or talking points that we think are most important to share with the Wakefield community about the priorities that we've been establishing for this renovated or new building? And they could connect to level of community need, connections to the district or the school kind of agenda moving forward, thinking about, you know, forward planning for the district and for the school, how that connects to educational needs for 21st century teaching and learning, or things that connect to architectural priorities. So this is where we just like you to take a stab at just using the menti.com and typing in this number 39702546 and addressing, just crafting a few sentences that might address some of these things. And collectively, we'll take them all together. I'm sure there'll be some emerging themes, but it will give us a place to start to be able to encapsulate some of the big picture kind of thinking that's been going on through these workshops. So I'm going to just open it up for people to share their ideas. Again, as always, this is anonymous. We're just trying to gather as much of your good thinking as possible so we can put it together. Don't worry about wordsmithing it too much. We just want to get a sense of what do you think it's important for Wakefield to hear about the needs of the school, about the opportunity here to design a new school, how it might benefit the community, how it benefits the students of Wakefield. Okay, lots of great ideas. I'm going to leave that up there in case people want to keep adding to that. We've got 5 more minutes. And first, I want to say again, thank you so much for being part of this process. The ideas and the priorities that we are establishing in this process will have a direct connection to how your building looks, how it's organized, how it gets designed. And I want to just turn over to the architects and to talk about any next steps. So Helen, Matt, Phil, just a little bit about what to expect in terms of next steps. I know, Phil, you've been spending a lot of time at the school, meeting with teachers and doing programming.
So we're going to have a educational focus group I think it's next Tuesday. So we're going to have a preliminary meeting later this week, getting ready for that. But the focus group will happen next week, and then there will be other focus groups that I will let Helen talk about. We're also developing a list of schools to visit. And I think, that we've heard a lot of very thoughtful ideas this evening and in our previous sessions. And I think to see different ways in which those opportunities have been developed in different communities by us and other architects. We want to mix it up and go to schools that we have no association with, but have very likely a lot to learn from. And so the idea when we get there is to see the schools together and then have an opportunity to talk about them. What did you like? What did you not like? And so I think that's going to be a very important step that we take.
Yep, and adding on to this, so there's a lot going on. There are additional focus groups meeting. Some of you in this visioning session have signed up for those focus groups. We've got one on site and one on sustainability and MEP systems. Both of those are happening Thursday and Friday this week. We have a community forum next Wednesday. So that is an opportunity to kind of sum up everything that David has done with the community and with us over the last month. And what else? We've got the PBC meeting on Thursday. We are starting to develop some conceptual design options and more community sharing to come. So the PBC meetings, PBC SBC meetings are also public. If you haven't seen enough of us this week, please come. And I guess I would ask Matt if you have anything to add, but before I say my last sentence, I want to thank David so much for leading 4 really dynamic, engaged sessions. As he said, this work is incredibly important to the steps we need to take.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Nothing
Anyone
to add.
else?
Nothing to add there, Helen.
Yes.
No, nothing to add. Maybe just a clarification that PBC and SPC is the Permanent Building Committee and School Building Committee, if folks are curious.
All right, I'm going to be obnoxious. I'm going to have one more ask, and I'm just going to take a group shot again of everybody smiling and looking at the camera. Great. All right. Thank you so much. I feel like, often as Helen said, they're going to be developing conceptual design alternatives. And I think this group has developed some kind of collective expertise. So I hope there's some way we can, tap into that to get some feedback as those things are evolving.
Yeah, will you have more sessions like this? Like maybe not, on different particular topics, or how will that work going forward?
Matt or Helen, in terms of, is there a forum we might have to get some feedback on the conceptual designs, or?
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Yes, so this Shane here. Yeah, so we'll be meeting every other week with the Permanent Building Committee, School Building Committee, where we'll be updating the conceptual designs, going through that process. I think, as Helen said, we have another public forum on December 8th, and then I think the next one after that, there'll be another one in January. I think it might be January 20th, but check the website for those dates. And we'll also be going to the school committee sometime in January as well. We're trying to confirm that date. So check the website. It's wakefieldmhsproject.com. And there'll be lots of updates on that. There'll be meeting schedules, and there'll be lots of opportunity to keep up with the project on that website.
I think we're going to want the educational focus team to be looking at those concept plans as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right, it's 9 o'clock. Good night, everybody.